What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages? Joker back again, once again, and spoiler alert,
he hates everything. He likes it!
So if you want a quick and dirty score without me really getting into any of the details, I would give Season of the Arrival an 8 out of 10. An interesting story hook, decent weapons and armor design, a really interesting dungeon, almost raid-like piece of content. So, there you go. If you don't want spoilers or you just really need somebody on the internet to validate your choices, there you have it. I gave it an 8 out of 10. So leave now, or forever hold your peace as I deconstruct the good, the bad, and the ugly of this Season Pass DLC. So, are they gone? Anyone whose fifis might get hurt from a fair and balanced review of this DLC, while I sprinkle skits, jokes, and the occasional swear word throughout the body of this work? Out of here like Vladimir? Cool, so now before we get into the meat and potatoes of my first impression, we do have one more digression. It's just a small one, I apologize, to set expectations. This video is quite clearly a first impressions video. I know I shouldn't have to say that, but yeah, people don't quite get that when they see a first impressions video. So even if the bulk of the first impressions video is, say, positive, they get offended because you said one or two negative things and they're like,
you don't know how the season's gonna play out.
It's infuriating, honestly. It's like, no shit, Sherlock, I don't know how the season's gonna play out. That's why it's called a first impressions video. That said, the content of any Season Pass DLC is pretty formulaic at this point. And given that these are my first impressions, they are likely and entitled to change over the course of the season. I know, gasp, shock, horror, lightning crackle, somebody's opinion evolving based on new information. That shouldn't happen at all. You should always just have one opinion at all times, right? Or something like that. I don't fucking people. The second thing that I want to go ahead and make clear is because this is a first impressions video of Season of the Arrival, we won't be talking about the live stream or Luke Smith's blog post. Talking about the future of the Destiny franchise deserves a little more attention than a side note in a first impressions video. And with all of that out of the way, let's make like Philip DeFranco and dive right in. Now, if you recall from 2 minutes ago before we digressed and did a bunch of disclaimers, I gave Season of the Arrival an 8 out of 10. And that might rightfully have you thinking to yourself, Nani the fuck? Or,
but Joker!
Like some of these comments from Twitter where I first posted that review score. Like people saying, why? It just seems like another public event-driven season. Yeah, the dungeon will undoubtedly be great, but outside of that, does it worry you that there's no roadmap? Which this was posted before the roadmap was posted, so I'm not gonna fault them for that. But to be fair, there's not really all that much on the roadmap. That said, the fact that this is a public event-driven season was a fairly large sentiment within the comment section of that tweet. Along with things like, wait a few days, we came from 3 seasons of bounties and public events, and I give 2 weeks max before you hate it again. Which, I don't hate Destiny, I never have, but hey, fucking details. Now, while I don't think any of these comments are disingenuous or mean-spirited, it does kind of miss the compartmentalized nature of the way that I review content outside of large content drops. I can in one moment think that the release of Season of the Arrival was a total banger, but in the next moment dislike one or both of the exotic quests. This is actually one of the best things about Destiny. It's a buffet. You can pick and choose what you like and what you don't like. Gasp, shock, horror. I know, you don't have to like the entire thing. Who knew? This is why I play so much PvP. I absolutely love playing PvP. This is why when Trials released, for the first time in a long time, I was actually upset with the game. Yeah, that's something people don't quite get either. Right now I'm reading a script. By the time that I write it, plan out the skits, if there are any skits, and record, I'm so far emotionally removed from whatever I was talking about that any anger or rage is acting. And since there's so many people that think I'm legitimately angry, I must be doing something right, so go me. Further digressions aside, the reason that I rated Season of the Arrival an 8 out of 10 is entirely because of the story. I'm invested, you have my attention. Maybe the rest of the season will suck shit through a straw, but Bungie landed the setup for the season. So for those of you not playing, or haven't had a chance to play, or missed the extremely subtle context of an enormous pyramid ship hanging over Io, Danny Dorito and the Doritettes have arrived. The plot doesn't waste any time as we get a previously on Buffy the Vampire Slayer opening detailing the plot of Shadowkeep, which serves to remind us that the last 3 seasons have been relatively pointless and more padded out than the beginning of this video. On top of reminding us that the story could have started here and nothing of value would have been lost. We then immediately cut to Anna and Rasputin. Now, this part is a tad confusing. Rasputin attacks the pyramid ships over on Io, and it fails. And then, well,
And I killed all but one of them.
What happened to the last one?
Pussed out like a bitch.
So Rasputin either goes full Yuga Sundown and Midnight Exigence right the fuck out of there, or the pyramid ships disable him. We're told he's disabled.
The day we've been dreading has finally arrived. The darkness is here. We need boots on the ground on Io. Recon. There's a pyramid. It's already disabled Rasputin.
But that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, considering this isn't Rasputin's first rodeo with the darkness. And if it could disable him, why didn't it do that back during the collapse? Now, there could be something that explains this in the lore that we've gotten this season, but first impressions video, and I haven't gotten around to reading all the new lore. But I sort of love the idea that everything we did to get Rasputin up to full power, after Osiris walked in and verbally dick-slapped Rasputin, after Rasputin and Zavala had this really beautiful heart-to-heart, where Rasputin revealed it was afraid. Then, at the first sign of trouble, Rasputin just nopes up out and says, you guys have got this. I just remembered I left my stove on and, well...
Pussed out like a bitch.
Regardless of what happened, Rasputin is off the board for the time being, making last season seem even more pointless than it already did, at least for right now. After this brief cinematic and introduction, we're thrown right into the action on Io, where Danny Dorito, or one of his Doritettes, have decided to take up residence over that really cool looking structure that marked the last place the Traveler touched before the collapse. And of course, like you do, we saunter on over to the pyramid ship. But who should belay our journey but none other than the Witch Queen herself, Savathun. Dun dun dun! So the TLDR is, way back when, circa 500-something years before the start of Destiny 1, the Traveler was doing its thing over Io, chilling like a villain, relaxing all cool, and planting a tree with silver wings somewhere outside of a school, when a couple of pyramids got up to no good and started making trouble in the neighborhood. The Traveler got into one little fight and, actually got its ass end blown out, and then humanity collapsed. But back to the tree with silver wings. So I guess the Traveler wanted to create the Black Garden 2.0? Or who knows, maybe the darkness planted the tree. Really doesn't matter. What does is Eris is there. However, like always, she's a bit in over her head. But fear not, we arrive just in time to save the day, but not before getting pulled into Savathun's realm. And well, you know how that goes. We fight our way to a stalemate, Eris pulls us out, Eris tells us that the darkness is trying to communicate with us, but Savathun is fucking with the messages, as she does. Eris then tells us that we need to take a seed from the Tree of Silver Wings. You know, those seeds that we don't speak of, but we take one anyways, and the plot starts in earnest. Also, I'm just saying, the seed from the Tree of Silver Wings is how we get our darkness powers in the next DLC. I'll do a full video on it later, but I couldn't help but notice the literary parallels between the light and the darkness coming from a beautiful garden, at least metaphorically speaking, only to be cast out of it because of the choices that the Traveler made, and then we have the Tree of Ruin, whose seeds, which seeds come from fruit, are used to bestow knowledge. So if this logic holds true, it'll be in the consumption of the seed that gives us knowledge. And it doesn't have to be literal consumption. Since we're dealing with a whole bunch of metaphors here, just read the Book of the Unveiling, it could just mean the consumption of knowledge through our interactions with this seed and the darkness. But again, I digress. Once we finish that story beat, we get this scene between Eris and Zavala.
What did you find?
It found me. The darkness reached out, but something interferes. Its messages to us are being defaced.
Defaced?
By the witch sister of the taken King Oryx. Savathun.
Your obsession gives her power.
No. She feeds on denial, ignorance. The Guardian has discovered a means to circumvent her. A seed of silver wings.
Eris?
If the darkness reaches out, we must reach back.
I will not sanction this.
We are beyond sanctions. It is here. I will return to Io. If we cannot determine what the darkness seeks, we will find ourselves on the verge of a second collapse. Perhaps that is what Savathun wants.
Please, don't.
Let me go, Zavala.
I absolutely love this moment between Eris and Zavala. This is a huge character turnaround from his original position that Eris was dangerous. He legitimately cares for her now, and you know what? Put that shit on a boat, because I'd ship it. There are 2 gameplay loops this season, and unfortunately I have a feeling both are going to get really old really fast. The first consists of playing a story mission each week to refresh your Seed of Darkness. This unlocks the lore book Singular Exigent, a lore book that is, well, an analogy wrapped in a metaphor, dressed as an illusion, one that says nothing at first glance, draped in what looks like the ramblings of Eris Morn, but it's actually a coded message from the darkness. It reads like it's using Eris's thoughts and memories and world concepts to try to speak to us, but its thoughts and concepts are too big and our words are too small. And its understanding is incomplete, so what we get is feelings conveyed through allegory. I've yet to read the entire thing, so I can't comment on if this is clever or if it's just pretentious. What I can say, however, is I have enjoyed what I've read so far. The second gameplay loop, the keystone piece of content that most people will be interacting with for the vast majority of the season, is Gambit Perfected. I mean, the new Gambit-esque public event. Kill things, bank moats, get loot. That's okay? It's a more hectic and kind of more streamlined version of Gambit without the PvP that uses public spaces for the gameplay space. Cool, fine, fair enough. If you're like me and you've had your fill of Gambit, this really isn't going to do much for you. But if you do like Gambit and you've wanted a more chilled, laid-back Gambit-like experience, this isn't terrible, but I don't see myself playing it a lot, and it suffers from the exact same thing every public event-focused DLC piece of content has always suffered from: the lack of matchmaking. One of the things I will never understand, one of the greatest mysteries of Destiny content creation, is how have we had so many public event focused DLC pieces of content, and yet Bungie still won't let you go into a patrol space with more than 3 people. The world may never fucking know. So the story is good, the gameplay is meh to okay, Gambit again. So what is the outright ugly? Now, I love the loot system. Let me say that first. I love being able to narrow down my choices. I love being able to pick what loot pool I want to pull from. I love the ability to select weapons or armor, and in the future, I will absolutely, positively love the ability to pick stat rolls. Thank you, all of that is really, really good. So, 10 out of 10, would loot again. Our problem comes in the amount of loot. This is an oh boy moment, and really does not instill the confidence that Bungie will be able to support the game post-sunsetting in the way that they'll need to justify sunsetting. And before we get into it, I do want to provide a caveat. The armor? Fine, there's a ton of armor. That's great, it's wonderful. Not really my thing, but you know what, if you like it, you like it. It's there to grind for. More power to you. My problem is the weapons, and it will always come back to the weapons. As with armor ornamentation in the future, I'll be able to keep the looks that I want, and if Bungie just so happens to keep implementing armor systems that allows us to roll for the stats that we want, then that's a great system. Mix the 2 systems together, and you know what, losing armor isn't as bad as it originally was thought. However, then we come to weapons. You're going to be grinding out the same handful of rolls for the same handful of archetypes over and over and over and over and over and over again, and the new season didn't introduce enough new weapon perks or weapon perks that I thought were like god tier, must go out and farm, for me to really care about them. So these aren't going to replace the traditional god rolls we've already been using. On top of that, the weapon selection for this season didn't really leave me all that confident that we're not just going to spend the next year regrinding things that Bungie retired. Season of the Arrival comes with 3 new exotics, barring any hidden exotics, and 20 legendary weapons, 10 of which are brand new. On the PvP side, there's only one weapon that might become meta, and that's called Denial the Pulse Rifle, but again, it's a pulse rifle, so your mileage will vary. On the PvE side, you're going to get a lot more out of the sandbox with weapons like the Falling Guillotine and the 2.0 versions of the Ikelos Shotgun and the Ikelos Sniper Rifle. But just looking over these weapons, there's nothing here that really screams, "New meta, must have me now," which is going to be something that Bungie desperately needs to work on going forward into the fall. And yeah, that's my opinion on the DLC. Even with its flaws, I still rate the DLC on a first impression basis an 8 out of 10. Will that score likely go down in the weeks to come? Well, I hope not, but probably. If Season of the Arrival is anything like the last couple of seasons, where it becomes just a really unpleasant, grindy, repetitive mess. But I do think it's vital to have a baseline and let people know that I enjoyed how the season started. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Leave a like, but only if you did. Subscribe for more and hit that bell notification because our overlords at YouTube can't push a video out to you if you don't hit that notification even though you're subscribed. Feel free to donate to my Patreon if you are feeling particularly generous, but above all else, stay frosty.